Hey guys, back with another podcast. Thank you so much for subscribing, leaving nice comments, supporting us. We really enjoy it. We're really enjoying doing the podcast. I hope you guys are enjoying too. And yeah, with that being said, let's just get into it. There's some breaking news basically as we film this. James Harden being traded to the Nets. What do you think about that, Tristan?
I think it's super interesting. I think the Nets coming into the year were already a contender. Um, Depending on how good Durant was when he came back, obviously he stepped in, didn't miss a beat, or if he did, at least you couldn't tell because still scoring super efficiently. I think he's the second leading scorer in the league. Um, Still getting it done. I think his assist numbers are like right up to his like career high level. So Durant is obviously that guy. I think the Harden trade overall is super interesting because it takes a good team and I think it elevates them to be a great team and definitely should be the favorite out of the East in my opinion. Um, I think it's interesting because the two other teams that they're competing with in the East, um, mainly being the Bucks, and the Sixers, I'd say as two examples would be teams that kind of lack everything the Nets have now. So the Nets have three guys that can close games in the playoffs, that have closed games in the playoffs. Kyrie's run with LeBron, obviously he was the go-to guy. Harden with the Rockets, they took that one of the best teams ever with that Golden State team in 2017, 2018 to the wire. And then Durant, obviously, when he was with the Warriors and even when he was with the Thunder. So you have three guys that have done it before in the playoffs. And I think that's crucial. Like we can't state it enough. And I think people like I've already seen overreactions talking about how there's only one ball. I'm not going to say fit is like super easy and seamless, but when you have three guys that can get it done in the playoffs, that's probably the most important thing. That's what's been holding the Bucks back. That's what held the Sixers back. And now you've got three of them. So I think it's an embarrassment of riches, at least on the offensive end. Um, we can get into more detail about it because I think defense and other things are going to be interesting, especially because you kind of gutted the depth in that roster. They already lost Spencer Dinwiddie, and Jarrett Allen was their best defender. So I think the trade was interesting and immediately at least elevates them to the top of the East. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is you say, there's three of them, but for now it's really only two, right? For some reason, this is actually a controversial topic on Twitter and everything, but the whole Kyrie Irving thing, I don't personally want to or feel any need to get into why he's gone or all this type of things, especially because it's, semi-political or fully political. We don't really know, right? Because he hasn't said anything to us, and my understanding is not to his team either. So I always thought that was a risk with Kyrie this year. It's going to be at least, I think they're saying, 2 weeks or something. I'm not an expert on the health protocols, but something based on who he's been with and quarantining and all these kind of things. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the three of them. But I think what's interesting is Harden and Durant are enough. I mean, that's the crazy thing, right? Just the two of them is enough. And imagine if we can get Kyrie back. But I don't know how hopeful I am on that. But regardless, they're going to be definitely scary.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Like we haven't seen Harden, at least in his prime, with another player of that caliber. The one year he did was probably the Chris Paul year, and look how far they got. So now you add another top 10 guy. I think you have two minimum top 10 guys, and Kyrie who's probably in the top 15 range when he's playing and healthy and engaged. So I think you bought yourself some equity in case Kyrie really is out for a longer period of time. Um, and the championship window is closing now because I think all the players are free agents in the next like year or two, um, and can decide whether or not they want to resign. But these are the type of risks you have to take. I know I keep comparing it to the Rockets trade, but I remember a lot of times people came out and said, well, there's only one ball. The offense isn't going to be great because of this. And that was one of the best offenses ever. So, the Nets are going to be able to get it done on offense. With a first time head coach, it's going to be interesting because it's already been kind of patchy with Steve Nash. And now you add another guy who's kind of a interesting locker room character. So I think the chemistry is going to be definitely something to monitor. But I mean, that is going to be the best offense in the league. I don't know how it isn't. I mean, you have so much firepower, and in the playoffs, you need guys that can take over games. You can patch together DeAndre Jordan and other centers. Hopefully, I think they have a mid level exception. They could probably pick up other guys. You need top end talent in this league to win. So I think it's super interesting. I'm excited. The Rockets finally got rid of Harden. I mean, that was a really I think he's the second best Rocket ever. Um, behind Hakeem. So it'll be. I think it's a fresh start for both teams, and will definitely be fun to watch. Are they
Yeah.
your pick out of the East?
E- Maybe. I don't know. They could be. I guess I would really have to think about it if I'm being 100% honest. I'd have to really think about who my pick would be. I think the trade changes everything. But also, that even brings me to what I was going to say. Even their roster, I really have to think about it now because, like you said, they can patch it together and they probably will. But losing Allen, losing Levert, Dinwiddie's out, right? He's done. So one of the things I liked and a lot of people liked about the Nets is outside of Kyrie and Durant, they were a playoff team. Like the rest of that roster was playoff caliber. Now it's looking a little thinner, and maybe they can patch some things together. This is the laziest take of all time, but it needs to be made. Harden, Kyrie, Durant, and Steve Nash. Yes, it's also lazy to say, oh, too many egos or oh, there's only one ball. But also, I think it'd be incorrect to say, oh, they'll figure it out. It's fine. They're good players. I don't think we can underestimate the fact that it's unstable. I think would be putting it nicely. So they have all the talent, but they have a lot of things to figure out. But like you said, I mean, you have Durant and Harden. I think you can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, and I think you're capitalizing on an Eastern Conference that was already up in the air. I mean, the Bucks got better with Drew Holiday, but I think the Celtics are still a couple years away. I mean, they have two guys that are really ascending, but they're not there yet. Um, so I think you're potentially capitalizing on an opportunity in a conference that you don't have the Lakers to go up against. I think even making it to the if you make it to the finals, that's a huge win. Um, can they take down the Lakers? That'd be a hell of a matchup. They have to get there first, but my gut reaction is awesome trade. I think um, anytime you can combine two top 10 players with a third star, you're in good shape. So now the pressure is on Nash and getting it done. But I mean, right now, Kyrie's sitting out and Durant is carrying that team to wins. So we've seen him; he's able to do that, and I think if you give him some help, the sky's the limit. So I'm really excited to watch them. I love the Bucks and I love the Sixers and I like the Celtics. So there's a lot of teams, even the Pacers, big win against the Warriors. Sabonis is playing like an all-star, super deep, and they just picked up Karis LeVert in this trade. So you have a lot of teams in the East that can make some noise. So overall, I think the NBA is never short for exciting trades and news. It's never there's no dull moments in the NBA, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think you mentioned trades. The NBA is changing, but the landscape is almost changing on a night to night basis. We talk about Kyrie being gone. The craziest thing is this COVID thing, and we're not going to turn this into the oh man, we need to fix these things and the protocols. A million people have talked about the protocols. Honestly, if you want to hear a real good protocol analysis, listen to Zach Lowe or Bill Simmons or any of these guys. But I think it is interesting players emerging, especially from a card perspective. He's already out there, but we've talked a lot about Tyler Hero, someone I have a lot of struggled maybe early. I think you could even say that, but over 30 in the past two games. And a bunch of these other guys are getting opportunities when people are sitting Maxi, a bunch of guys. When these people sit out just from being an NBA fan, it's cool to see these guys emerge, but especially from a card and hobby perspective, I think we're going to see some really cool moments and more players than usual get their shine this year.
Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about, and um, everyone is paying attention to the NBA right now. There's been some postponed games, so there definitely is some. It's shaky, at least to say the least, in terms of COVID and how quickly it's going around and how hard it is to stop players from interacting with each other when you're sweating and playing for 30 minutes. It's ridiculous, right? So, and the delayed time and showing symptoms, getting other people sick. It's definitely something that's unprecedented, but the NFL did it, the MLB did it, so there's no reason to think the Warriors can't. Sorry, the NBA can't. But
We see your bias coming out right there.
yeah, I am born and raised.
Yep.
But I want to touch on Hero. You talked about him a little bit. I think he's been awesome. I've never been the biggest fan, only because of how highly touted he is. I like his game. I think he's a great young player, but I never saw the same upside that other people did. Um, and now it's funny, it's kind of swung the other way. I think a lot of people are out on Tyler Hero. They were saying he didn't look very good to start the year. But I saw him play against Philly, and he almost single-handedly won him that game. There's no Bam, no Jimmy Butler, and he put up like a 34 burger, was hitting crazy shots down the stretch. Definitely showed that he could be the go-to guy on a good team. They didn't get the win, but definitely promising for hero cards. And he's just a really fun young player that can shoot. He's flashy. He's entertaining. So I think the Heat should be set for years to come with him and Bam.
Well, yeah, that's the one thing about Hero I will say in defense of him. And there's a lot of questions we still have to ask of him, even someone like myself who's a huge believer. But the one thing I've always seen in him is, first of all, he's obviously box office, right? Flashy, has that it factor. But I mean, we see it and he's showing it again. He at least, you can't say he doesn't have the potential to be a number one option. It's a big journey for him to get from where he is now to being that on a night to night basis, and then even from there being, leading a contending team or at least a playoff team as a number one option. Big journey. But when I look at it from an investing perspective or a card perspective, for me to invest in a guy, I have to at least see that potential. And with most players, even a lot of the names you hear, I'm not going to throw Garland under the bus or any of these guys, but it's like, I'm not sure I see that potential already. You know what I mean? That number one option potential. So whenever Hero gets the chance, he really shows it to me. So that's why I'm a believer in him. Yes, I am worried because, like I said, it's a huge jump from where he is to being a true number one. But that's what gives me the most hope is he can do it at least
Yeah,
occasionally.
yeah, absolutely can get it done, and can be the go-to guy on a good team. He already did it a little bit in the playoffs and finals last year. Just we want to see the consistency, and then we want to see other parts of his game other than scoring. But he's been really good the last week, so it'll be interesting to watch him going forwards.
Yeah, definitely. A bunch of interesting stuff going on in the league. Um, Warriors looking pretty good. Lost a couple, but I still seen signs of life from Steph. Great to see. He's obviously been killing it. I mean, that actually can be the transition into our first Q&A. We don't really have hobby news this week's, guys, so we're going to try to knock out a lot of your Q&A questions. Obviously, if you have those, definitely feel free to leave them in the comments, and we would love to answer them. So the first question is, this might even be a little controversial, but it was, why is Stephen Curry so undervalued? What do you think about Stephen Curry's value in the hobby?
Well, I let the Warriors slip out of my mouth a little earlier, even when I wasn't talking about them. So I'm always down to talk about Steph. One of my favorite players, super valuable though. And I would actually disagree. I think from a value standpoint, you pull up his career numbers and then compare it to someone like Durant or Harden or these other guys, and you'd actually be kind of surprised. He hasn't done it for as long because he started out kind of rocky. Then he had last year taken off. Um, so his career numbers aren't insane, but in terms of impact, like he changed the game. All these young kids came up watching Steph Curry, patterning their game around Steph Curry. So I think from a culture perspective, maybe he is a little undervalued because he really was, aside from LeBron, probably the second most impactful player for our generation. So, but here's what I've always said is like you have to compare his prices to other guys in his range. So like I think Durant will probably go down as a better all-time player, and until recently was like one third the price or half the price, which is totally absurd. Especially let's just say even. Let's say they're both, knocking on the top 15, top 10 range. The fact that Steph is twice as expensive doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's changed in the last like 2 months. Durant has caught up, but Steph was never really undervalued in my eyes. I think I think all the legends, I think LeBron, Steph, Durant, Kawhi, they're super solid investments. Um, they will go up, in my opinion, but to say undervalued isn't totally doing it justice. Maybe Chris Paul or some other player that's a little less expensive is fair to talk about. But when Steph has national treasure cards ending for 400,000, 600,000, 200,000, and his rookie refractors are, in the 50K and up range, it's totally not an undervalue in my eyes. But I'm glad to hear the question. I'm glad to hear there's another Steph fan out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what I'll say is I'd kind of maybe disagree too. I'm not sure he's undervalued. I was shocked because I was looking. I was like, I think the market might have cooled off on Steph a little bit. I'll look to pick up. Like this was a while ago, even during the summer, and I looked up his tops, and I was like, wait a minute, this is what I just paid for LeBron. You know what I mean? So that was crazy to me. His prices. The one thing I will push back on a little bit though is you mentioned Kevin Durant, definitely James Harden. I would push back strongly against. I think their statistics, sure, you could make that argument. Comparable, maybe. I would have to really dive deep personally to know. But I think in terms of the narrative of their career and how they'll be remembered, I think Steph is certainly in a league of his own compared to Harden, but I think even KD, because I'm trying to like figure out a new kind of card catchphrase, but I think we have a lot of card martyrs out there, or sports martyrs who are like, "Oh, I'm dying on my Oscar Robertson Hill. He's so undervalued and all this stuff." It's like that's just or Draymond Green should be worth so much more because of how valuable he was to the team. It's like that's not how it works though. So if we're talking from a purely investment perspective, I think there's even benefits to Steph and like a fandom that Steph has, especially overseas. Like we talk about Asia, there's a ton of money over there that I don't think LeBron is going to have. So that might be kind of a bold statement, but in terms of how they're going to be remembered, and at the end of the day, I mean, yes, there's investors, and I guess I'm going a little far there, but it's fans buying cards, right? Steph Curry has fans like no one else.
And will always have fans. He's got like that Kobe appeal. Like I think
Yep.
Kobe kind of everyone thinks wow, he must be like the second or third best player ever. But the traditional people will say, well, no, he's top 10, but he's probably closer to 10 than he is to one. Um, but like you said, like there's people in China and people in the U.S. that grew up watching Kobe, and he's larger than life. And unfortunately, he passed away. It's tragic, but legends like Kobe and then legends like Steph never die. And yeah, to your point, maybe someone like Harden, especially with his meltdowns, isn't on that level. But the question was talking about undervalued. So we could talk about the career later, but I think Steph is still a solid investment. I think when he retires, he's going to go up overnight. And especially when people watch, the Steph Curry documentary comes out, it's like if you look at what happened to Jordan prices in the last 5 years, has he played a game? No, but like the whole market has gone up. So, assuming he gets the same bump as these other all-time greats have, I think Steph is a sound investment. I just wouldn't say he's widely undervalued.
Yeah. We can go back and forth on the minutia, but I think in general we agree on that for sure.
Yeah,
Okay. Next question. Well, it's top 5 underrated players from the 2018 draft. I think we get a lot of good questions, but some of them are like full podcast, full videos. So how about just a couple undervalued players you think from the 2018 draft class?
absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna hit on two of these. I did a little prep, did a little
All right,
homework on this one.
let's hear it.
Um, First one is Jaren Jackson. It's kind of the easy take. Um, he was a high pick for Memphis. First year looked pretty good. Shot the three ball at like 36%. Was blocking shots. Didn't play a ton of minutes. Second year played super well. Was averaging over 17 points per game. Had like a 40-point game where he was hitting like I think he hit like 8 to 10 threes, and showed elite shooting ability combined with elite shot blocking ability. Two of probably the most important traits if you're a traditional or if you're a big man in today's game. So I think Jaren Jackson is super exciting. Given the fact that he was hurt last year, he didn't really get the bump that a lot of these other guys got. So I think his card prices, assuming he comes back healthy and steps in with Ja, should definitely rise. So he would be the first pick, kind of the easy take. He was injured, kind of forgotten, still super promising. A
Yeah, I think
whole
his
lot of
prices
upside.
will definitely rise when he comes back. There's gonna be a ton of excitement. He'll have a 30-point game. You know what I mean? I won't be
Oh,
surprised
he's
to
gonna
see
have
that
a
at all.
he'll probably have another 40-point game.
Mm.
Jaren Jackson has been awesome and super fun to watch. And you combine him with Ja, that Grizzlies team has got a nice nucleus, and they're right now out of sight, out of mind. So that's generally how I've made money in this hobby. So definitely an underrated player in the 2018 draft. Um, the other guy I'm going to talk about is also balling out this year, Mikal Bridges. So I know Philly drafted him and then moved him right before they drafted. I don't know how that worked out, but another Philly asset that's playing for someone else and making a difference. So you have I mean Fultz. It's funny talking about Philly assets. There's a lot of guys they missed out
Yeah.
on Tatum, but um, to keep it at Mikal Bridges, he's averaging 15 points this year. He's shooting the three ball at 45% and shooting 50% from the field in general. Um, he is 3 and D. You have all these guys that are labeled 3 and D, everywhere. And this is finally a player. He's 24 years old, should be improving on the same timeline as Devin Booker and Ayton. Um, and I think that Phoenix team with Chris Paul can make some noise even this year. If you ask me who's the second best team in the West, I'm saying the Clippers or the Nuggets, or there's teams in the mix, but there's no reason why Phoenix can't be in that top, 2 to 4 range. There's no reason. They've got two guys that are great on offense. Aiton should be making steps forward, and then you have guys like Bridges and Cam Johnson that make some, that are productive too. So those would be my two guys. I think Bridges is kind of like a cheap, under the radar guy, and then Jaren Jackson is like a discount because of the injury guy.
Yeah. For me, I think it's kind of tough because from a hobby perspective, we're about to be 2 draft classes removed, right? So for most of these guys, it's kind of the end of their relevancy. So if we're looking for undervalued, maybe these later in the draft guys, I don't know how willing I would be to jump in and invest at this exact moment. But just so I'll just say 2 players who I think are good, maybe a little bit overlooked, but they still get some attention. Devonte Graham for Charlotte, not putting up huge numbers early, but a very talented player, that's for sure. He's shown it. And I think if he was in the right situation, I think they have a lot of guards there. You obviously have the LaMelo factor. I think maybe this season might be a little rough for him, but if he was in the right situation like he was before, he can put up buckets. And as a second round, late pick, good to see that. Mitchell Robinson, a little bit, people might push back against the fact that he's overlooked because I think he kind of has been a trendy name and in the hobby and fantasy and basketball and everything, but I think it's for a good reason. Defensively, his percentages, once again, I'd have to look deep. So I apologize for the shoddy work we have here, but I'd have to imagine his advanced analytics are really, really good, just the way he affects the game and how efficient he is. So I think you know, as we move down the draft board a little bit, you're looking for people who can contribute to winning basketball, and it actually thins out pretty quickly. So those were just 2 guys who stood out to me as people who could be part of winning basketball teams.
1,000% love Mitchell Robinson. I can speak to the fantasy success. Yeah, I have him on my team, and he's like
Hmm.
a top 20 fantasy player just because he shoots like 70% from the floor, blocks a couple shots, gets steals, doesn't miss a ton of free throws, super efficient, effective, positive plays, no turnovers, things like that. And I think that, transfers over to the game of basketball. So um, I think Robinson, like to your point, is maybe undervalued. We don't know. Like I haven't done a deep dive on his prices either, but I think at least you look at like someone like Jared Allen. I think Robinson has like maybe similar upside to someone like Jared Allen, who's been getting some love in the last couple weeks. So Robinson is, at least from like a basketball standpoint, I think a little bit undervalued and underappreciated. I think he's the second best player on that team, behind Julius Randle. Um, so I think those are two good guys. Devontae Graham has kind of struggled out the gate, but to
Mhm.
your point, he's already done it, and I think no one expected what he did last year. So maybe it's a good buy too.
Definitely. Well, if anyone is interested in Mitchell Robinson, is convinced that he's a very good investment, there's some guy named Trike415 who's selling a Obsidian RPA on eBay of Mitchell Robinson. So I don't know. I don't know who that is, but it struck me as a really good deal.
You might have to send him my way. I might be buying that.
Hey, you got it, man. I definitely highly recommend. Okay, the last question is 2 that we're kind of going to combine. So the first one was, do you think NBA cards value has reached its peak? And the other one was specifically in reference to, I assume this is a card he has. It was a Jokic Noir Auto rookie card and whether he should sell now.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll reference the first point. This is one of the most common questions that that I get and that other people get. I think because there's so much new money in the hobby. Cards are selling for all-time highs. There's cards that are hitting, over $2 million, and then even like mid-tier guys are selling for tens of thousands of dollars for their nice stuff. So values have never been this high. So yes, is it at an all-time high right now? The answer is yes. Can it remain? I think there's a lot of reason to think it can. Like you have a ton of excitement in the hobby. Like you have people that were flipping shoes that are now getting into basketball cards. You have more mainstream, like conservative investment groups that are actually investing in startups that invest in sports cards and other alternative investments. You had our guy Darius on that. His entire company, they raised like $30 million, and they're only sales and marketplace right now is going to be geared towards sports cards and, memorabilia. So I think the market has a lot of upside, like even like the DraftKings money. Like look at all the people that are willing to spend $100 a night, on fantasy stuff. So I think money in sports card, the potential to grow is still there. But I'd also caution people, that there's a lot of excitement and sometimes it's not always a good thing. In the sense that like when prices are driven up on players and then a couple people want to sell and then start to sell stuff off like cheaper than market, that's how stuff crashes. So I think the high end stuff is always going to go up. And I think all the young players that continue to make leaps on schedule are going to go up. But I think there's going to be some people caught holding the bag on players that don't pan out, or on, people that take swings on prospects, which happens all the time. So I don't think it's hitting. I don't think it's. Not, I think it's going to go up. To answer that question, I just think it's a little more dependent on who, what time, and what cards you're buying.
Yeah, I mean, you hinted at it a little bit, but I think big picture, I'd agree with you. And I think almost everyone who listens to this probably agrees with you that there's a lot of reason to be hopeful, but cautiously hopeful, right, for card prices overall going forward. But just to, take it a little bit deeper where maybe there might be some disagreement, I think right now at this exact moment during the season for basketball cards specifically, I think we maybe have hit a little bit of a peak, at least when it comes to flipping and prospecting, which you touched on. So, and to kind of that's why I combine it with the other question, because the guy was asking about Jokic. I think people are going to shift to playoff mode, kind of more soon here. I do star stock videos, which and I was just staring at the prices of literally anyone who's relevant from the 2019 draft class, and I was like, I don't can't do it. Just looking at the charts of I was just like, I'm sorry, like I can't do it. How much they've went up. They're all, pretty much every player is up like 50%, if not 100, in the
Yeah.
past month. So I just don't know how much more is there at this exact moment in time if you're trying to do a quick flip or
Yeah.
prospect. Basically, that's how
It's
I feel about prices.
hard to pull the trigger on a $200 Kobe White card when it was $100 a couple months ago.
Yeah, I mean,
And there's
this one will be great for you too, and it's fine. I'm a broken record. I admit it. I'll stop apologizing. But Roy Hachimura Prism base. It was in a Star Stock A, which is like, it means it's in good condition. But the lowest ask was $85. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, I want you guys to enjoy this series and make the decisions, but I was like, I cannot pay $85 for a raw Prism base of Roy.
no,
I can't do it.
no. Go buy a legend. Go buy Chris Paul. Go buy go buy undervalued. I mean, I'm kind of a broken record too with like the older vintage players, but when you compare like a Rui Hachimura and like these other guys that really don't have the ceiling of like a Hall of Famer and 8-time All-Star, or maybe they do. I guess that is their ceiling, but
Well,
is it going
I'll
to work
say for
out?
him, he doesn't even have. That's my big issue with him. I mean, at least Garland, I guess maybe he could become something special. You never know. But for certain guys, like you kind of know what they are. So that's my issue with him specifically. But to not turn it into the grumpy old man podcast, which I would definitely be the main host of. Yep. Jokic, to be more optimistic, I think for you guys who are looking for opportunities in the market, it's these guys who are going to be relevant in the playoffs. I mean,
Yeah,
we've just been talking in our circle of friends. We think Kawhi is really cheap for where he is. I mean, he hasn't looked great out there, so that's what
he's looked pretty
concerns
good
me.
though. He's looked pretty good the last 2 weeks. He's
He's
heating
looked
up.
good in terms of scoring, but like his athleticism and
Oh,
stuff,
you're right. Yeah,
it's
I
just
think,
like he's like
but
hobbled out there almost.
yeah, he is. But I would challenge people to go watch the Toronto games when he was coming back. It
Well,
looked
but
like he was. It
I
looked
think
like he
that's
was playing on
gone.
one
It could be
leg.
gone. Well, yeah, okay. But even
Like
from then, I just feel like things have changed.
yeah, maybe. And I mean, I know Bill Simmons said it's gotten worse. I don't know if I've seen the decline that people are really talking about. I think if you've been paying close attention, like I've watched a lot of Kawhi games, and I'd like to think that um, there isn't a big decline, but I think, the load management and how young he was when he started doing that, coupled with all those games off. And I think he has like a degenerative knee issue, right? Like that's just a fact.
Yeah.
So, athletically, it's definitely going to be a question mark in the next like 2 to 3 years. But in LA, plays for the second best team in the West. Historic meltdown last year. That doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement, but I think you have to look at that as a good buying opportunity of someone who's still in their prime, contending, can be the best player on a championship team. Oh, by the way, he's done it twice, 2 finals MVPs. Definitely has a chance of picking up a third in the next 3 years, especially if Paul George, Ibaka, all these other pieces continue to play well. So, yeah, I mean, I got a little sidetracked too. But like, I've had questions about Jokic and these other guys. I mean, Jokic, to be fair, he's doubled. So for a lot of people, if you bought a card for $200, you could sell it for 400. I'm not going to tell you don't. And I might even tell you two, but I also think there is more upside. I think the
Yeah, I
Nuggets
wouldn't be in a
can.
rush. I
No,
wouldn't be in a
why?
rush
Why
on these guys
rush?
who are relevant.
Look, go look at his numbers. Like this guy is going to be another probably it's either first or second team All NBA, and that's just because of how good Embiid has been too. Like you have these young guys that are leading their teams. Like he's averaging a triple double. He's transcendent on offense. So, the Nugget, as far as the Nuggets will go, is going to be depending on Jokic. So I think there's no rush to sell someone who's going to be making noise in the playoffs, and his numbers go up. Like his numbers in the playoffs every year have gone up. He's I saw this stat. He made like 10 of 17 clutch shots, which is like the best percentage, one of the best percentages all time. So um, there's a lot to be excited about with Jokic going forward, even this year.
Yeah, I
But
mean, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just
I,
gonna say that with Jokic, I mentioned I wouldn't be in a rush to get rid of him. I think I mentioned prospecting. I think people are gonna kind of, that's the early season. That's when it should be happening. You want to see what guys are doing. People are getting excited. Who took the leap? Who didn't? I think that's kind of gonna end, but people aren't gonna be like, okay, well, I guess we're just not speculating in basketball anymore. It's still gonna happen. So I think it's kind of like I said before, it's gonna be those who's gonna have playoff success. That's where the
Absolutely.
money is gonna flow to. And once again, broken record. But if a bunch of these people who made triple your money on Darius Garland, congrats. But I think they should, and you will see them moving their profits into some of these guys who are gonna make some noise in the playoffs.
It's the name of the game. Um, because right now, like you said, we're like 3 weeks in. Everyone's excited, happy about the young players that have taken a step forward. But 60 games in, Darius Garland's averaging 15, 14 points a game. Shooting numbers aren't that good. Team, by the way, not that good. Yeah, you could see prices drop. It just happens like that. Prices will drop overnight. And then go check in the off season. Like we're gonna run. You know what we're gonna do, Troy? We're gonna
Yeah.
run a little timestamp right now
Okay.
in prices, and then we're gonna do prices in 6 months in the off season,
Oh
and
man,
we're
we're
gonna
gonna
look
have to
at.
talk to our editor about this one. He's gonna be
No,
working
no,
the.
we're doing. I'll be the editor for this one. Or
Okay.
yeah,
All
you're
right.
right. The editor might get paid overtime for this one, but let's do it. Let's do it on those two guys. Let's do it on Rui Hachimura and let's do it on Darius Garland, and
Okay.
and see.
Also, if anyone didn't catch that joke, this is not a big time podcast, so you're looking at the two editors right here. But yeah,
Mainly
that'd be good.
you, which I
Yeah,
appreciate.
no, it's both of us, but yeah, that'd be good to compare and interesting to see. Just real quick, this is probably a whole nother podcast, but we talked about it before. Don't underestimate the fact we have hoops coming out, we have Donruss coming out. I think Prism is in March, and that's sooner than you would think for these young guys. So I'm hoping you might like some guys might fall to the wayside and forgotten about pretty quickly once these new rookies come out, but also at the same time, it'll kind of energize the market, I think, once these new guys come in.
Totally, especially with how good the draft class has been. Like everyone talked about, wasn't going to be a good draft class, but Anthony Edwards has shown flashes. LaMelo Ball has looked awesome. Like picking up, he's averaging like 8 rebounds a game or something insane. And then Wiseman has shown flashes, and then Tyrese Halliburton is like already a winning
Yeah.
player. So
Yeah.
I
Some
think there's
people
a
were
lot.
upset that we didn't mention him in the
I
last
know,
podcast. I mean,
which
fair enough.
I
We
don't
should
blame
have.
him. Yeah,
We
he's
should
been
have.
probably the best rookie so far right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about with those cards, and I'm kind of like you. Sometimes I'm crossing my fingers, hoping cards remain cheap because it'll be good buying opportunities for us in the off season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. The last thing I'll leave us with is I think the success of LaMelo specifically, but also the entire draft class is really good for the market and the hobby. Because especially with the way they're going to pump out product this year, it's going to be way higher print runs. If it was, I mean, it's true though, right? Oh yeah, sorry, I'm not supposed to tell anyone.
It's
But
true.
that would be really, I think that might be dangerous if we saw retail sitting on shelves. I know there's a million people banging the computer just being like, I wish it would just sit on shelves, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
I think that would be a little bit, it'd be interesting to see. So we can speculate forever, but we'll see what happens with that. So yeah, that's it for the episode, guys. Really appreciate your questions, and make sure to comment down below. Make sure to subscribe because this one should be on the new podcast channel. Make sure to like. Oh my God, I forgot it in my other video too, but we're doing the giveaway. So if you've made it to this part of the video, you definitely deserve your giveaway. So if you're subscribed and you comment and like, you're entered to win either the old school or new school cards. Comment which one you want. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Troy.